Here.
Councilmember McKee-Kent,
Here.
Councilmember Tripp,
Here.
Vice Mayor Knight,
Here.
Mayor Mueller.
Here. Thank you. Can we all stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now it's time for adoption of the agenda. I think staff would like to make a comment.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Staff would recommend that item 10A be removed from this agenda and rescheduled tentatively to the May 2nd regularly scheduled town council meeting. And if that is the case, there are some numbers in the general fund exhibit they will draft in item 10B that will remain draft until this item 10A is heard on the future meeting.
All right. Thank you very much for that. So, did you want to say something, Gary? No? Okay. So with that, do we have a motion to adopt today's agenda with the exception of item 10A?
Move approval of the agenda with the exception of item 10A.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. How'd we do that on that, Eddie?
Oh.
How'd we do?
Just went for one vote.
Who?
Fine.
There you go. We went very smooth.
Thank you.
All right, great. That was good. Thank you very much for that. Next item, we have one proclamation today. This is a proclamation by the Yountville Town Council declaring a climate emergency for April 2023. And I will read it here from the dais. Whereas all the world's countries came together in 2015 to sign and accord the Paris Climate Agreement, agreeing to reduce climate-changing activity that will keep the warming trend below a 1.5 degree increase, and to acknowledge the scientific evidence that it is man's activity that is driving this climate-changing increase. And whereas the 2023 Sixth Assessment Report to the UN from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change states that unless deep and immediate cuts to achieve net zero CO2 by the end of this decade are made, the world will overshoot the agreed upon 1.5 degree maximum increase, and the consequences of that will be irreversible damage and ultimately an unlivable planet. And whereas the evidence also shows that developed nations are clearly the main contributor to this crisis, and that vulnerable communities who have historically contributed the least to current climate change are disproportionately affected. It is our responsibility to work actively for a just transition to a safe climate and environment, and must encourage participation and protection of marginalized communities to ensure that they benefit from a sustainable and just economy. And whereas climate change not only affects humans but all species on the entire planet throughout the destruction of habitats, disruption of food chains, an untenable environment for reproduction that threatens all species' continued existence. And whereas we possess the knowledge, the technology, and alternatives to change our patterns and use of these climate change causing energy sources and materials. And whereas it is inexcusable to do too little, too late, knowingly subjecting both humanity and all species on this planet to a limited future of scarcity, forced migration, unstable social institutions, and ultimately an uninhabitable planet. And whereas the town of Yountville and the Napa Valley have experienced firsthand the devastation, displacement, and negative impacts of climate change through unprecedented wildfires and drought, And whereas the town of Yountville has seen itself as a leader in the Napa Valley on climate with the formation of the 2015 Go Green Team, the production of the 2016 Yountville Climate Action Plan, and participation in the County Climate Action Committee, and it recognizes that much more needs to be done at emergency speed, and whereas the town of Yountville has enjoyed an extraordinary level of volunteerism and participation, the town now needs that spirit to live in climate solutions that will protect, strengthen, and sustain our community. And whereas the town of Yountville declared a climate emergency on March 15, 2022, committing to providing leadership and services in partnership with residents, community organizations, businesses, Napa County, and regional jurisdictions to educate, mobilize, and accelerate support for comprehensive and sustained climate action to reduce harmful environmental impacts and strive to achieve a goal of net zero climate pollution. Now, therefore, let it be resolved that I, Mayor Margie Moeller, on behalf of the Yountville Town Council, do hereby proclaim that the town of Yountville acknowledges and declares that there is an environmental and climate emergency that threatens our town, our region, our state, and our world. And the town council may seek to create a climate education and local action committee with the intent to assist in education of residents with alternative solutions to reduce local greenhouse gases, to suggest sustainability policy initiatives for council and community action, and to facilitate action recommended by the Napa County Climate Action Committee, and the town council may explore budget opportunities and implications for staff to support to a climate education and local action committee should one be created, and the town council will consider an item under its ceremonial flag policy to fly the International Earth Day flag from the ceremonial town hall flagpole annually during the month of April as part of the commitment to combating climate change and support of environmental stewardship. Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Reeves, for your help. Okay, with that, I am now going to ask for public comment on anything that is not on today's agenda. Yes, could you come to the podium and state your name, please? And we've got 3 minutes set aside for you.
Hi, my name is Susan.
Had to adjust the volume in the back.
My name is Debbie Alterstar. I live in Yountville. I'm also an MSW and an LCSW. I'm a former medical social worker. Right now my license is considered inactive because I've been saving Ukrainians, as you know. But mostly I've done medical social work with seniors, and that's, I want to talk about a specific resident in our town, but mostly focused on a part pertaining to the town. This resident, Francine Cohen, attempted to ask for permission to give me 3 minutes to talk on her behalf because I'm helping her and I'm more succinct about things that are she's not familiar with, but that was not something that could be accomplished before this meeting. And so I'll stick to the 3 minutes, but I want to ask that we all meet further later. I have spoken to Eric and to Hillary and a little bit to Sam. So what I want to suggest, in short, this resident, Francine Cohen, is going to be evicted June 1st from her residence in Bella Vista that she understood was owned by a trust that her brother set up for her in perpetuity as per her special needs. She's disabled. She's on Social Security disability income. She has 20 hours of help from an IHSS worker each week. That suggests a significant degree of impairment. It's not easy to get certified to receive IHSS and get that many hours a week. Her conditions are many. She has a recent diagnosis also of leukemia that's new as of March. And I could see through her posting on Nextdoor she was falling through the cracks. It's not hard to do. It's a worse landscape than it was pre-COVID, and from worse than when I worked for the Queen as a medical social worker in 2015 through 17. I've worked other places as well. So I want to make an analogy that we are the heart of Napa, the Napa Valley, but we also act on objective data. Mayor Mueller just presented objective data about the climate crisis that I'm assuming we all believe because we are making policies in our town based on it. I think it's time for our town to get objective data about the status of housing, of affordable housing, and how that pertains specifically to seniors and disabled, especially because we are a community with profoundly unusual demographics. As you know, half of our population is over the age of 62. A person who's under 62 may still be very disabled. People age differently. So I think it behooves us to have new curiosity about this situation. I want to thank Sam Holland for giving us, spending 30 minutes trying to find resources for Francine. Many people have. I look under every rock, every single rock, and it's a dire situation. We don't know if we're going to be able to prevent her homelessness. So I have to unpack that more for you later. What I was able to do as a medical social worker is escalate her case in many systems. So Adult Protective Services, who she had self-referred to, is now going to help with 2 months housing if she can get into affordable housing. I also got her medical social work because I knew that even though she's been turned down before, now that she has a new cancer diagnosis as of March, the only good news about that is that she now gets a caseworker. And people at the Queen have extra pull. That's just a statement of fact. We've been, in fact, based on the recommendations of APS and the Queen and also Napa Valley Community Housing, I escalated this case to the attention of the supervisors, the county, to see if we could get her into the pipeline for an emergency housing voucher in time. Usually they'll only look at you for assessment 2 weeks before you're homeless. The reality is, though, just like with Section 8, there are no vouchers. They've all been used up as of November 21, this year. Past year, there's now a waiting list of over 250 individuals. They're all ranked based on an assessment from HUD. Even if she's conceived to be seen as more needy than others, she's not going to get a voucher. There are none. And that's usually how people in her situation are able to move to new housing once they lose theirs. I'm working closely with Gail Bray, and she's the liaison between me and Erica Sklar, the executive director of Napa Valley Community Housing. Now this gets to the specific recommendations for our town. Erica's recommendation was that the town consider looking at mobile home units, whether this helps Francine in time or not, as part of our affordable housing stock. I think that's a considerable recommendation from a very informed individual, Executive Director of Napa Valley Community Housing, for us to look at. She's not available right today. I asked if she could record something. She's going to try to squeeze you in as she has time for a number of reasons. A related problem is all these systems are profoundly impacted, so they've literally been turning Francine away, saying if we help you, we have to help other people. Here's a list. It's a 10-page list. Seriously, this isn't it. I downloaded it. Of places that are mostly not relevant that they give people in her situation, and they basically say, don't come back. They said, good luck. And so she was falling through the cracks. The other thing that I think that the town should do, in addition to having a conversation about this, is set up a task force. You were just talking, Mayor Mueller, about having a, I forget the name of the task force that you talked about, to educate community members because of the dire issues of global warming and doing our part. We need to see this as a dire issue. Napa Valley Community Housing agrees this is the tip of the iceberg. We're seeing her case here, but so many seniors in our town, if they're not living in the vets home, they are one incident away from homelessness. Because once you lose your housing as a senior on fixed income, you can't afford to move anywhere. Obviously, our vets are okay, but, still. So I want you to know that's not coming from me being an alarmist. I'm passing on information from others. There's broad consensus here. So related question is, what kind of responsibilities do towns take on in this new reality? Just like we never did climate change stuff before, I don't know what year, maybe Eric or Pam know because they've been on council other times, right? But it wasn't usually part of town business, but it became part of town business by necessity. because if we don't do it, it doesn't happen. Same thing with senior services. We are cobbling together as many forms of assistance as we can so that maybe her 2 housing applications she's turning in this week, one because she won a lottery to be able to apply to a new place, the other because Napa Valley Community Housing is working with me. They told me about a studio that's not yet marketed to the public that didn't have a waiting list. So we're turning in our application this afternoon. She'll be the first application in because it's not yet been promoted. Connections, right? That's not unfair. They'll take whoever's the first qualified applicant. So, but they don't know yet if their requirement is that you have 2 times the annual income relative to the cost of your rent over the course of a year, or if it's 3 times, and how much they have wiggle room. A lot of these facilities don't have the legal structure to have space to wiggle that requirement. And so if her income is $18,000 a year, $1,500 a month, that's what it is, fixed income, plus she works for a town, makes about $2,000 a year. She's not even going to make the having income 2 times the amount. You know, so let's look at it. $1,500. Her rent is $1,000 here at the mobile home park. Her rent will be $1,000 in any of these places she's applying to because she doesn't have a housing voucher. So she's effectively paying 2/3 of her rent. Sorry, 2/3 of her annual income for rent. We all know that's not sustainable, so it's really not surprising she has some credit card debt. She may be rejected on the basis of that. I was able to get her this medical social worker, and so we signed her up for credit counseling to make her look at least she's in good standing. We're doing every single thing. I've asked Eric as a part of the Kiwanis Club if we can be a fiscal to collect community funds because it looks like she'll be short financially on these income requirements. These applications will, one of them, she applies both of them this week. The other one, the clock starts ticking. She has 10 days to show she can make the income at Caritas, where she won the lottery, to be number 1 to apply. But the reality is, for their 20 units, she's number 5 or number 7 turning her paperwork in. There may not be anything in her price range left there. Once she turns in her paperwork tomorrow, the 10 days start, and she right now doesn't have the income. She'll be turned down. They're trying to work with us. I had to escalate the case there as well. So that's me speed talking for you to understand how serious this issue is and to really understand that even though people are really well attentioned, referring people to services that were on our list from a few years ago, a lot of those services have changed their scope and closed doors in some respects just because of the times we're in. No more emergency vouchers.
Can you quickly wrap up for us?
Yes. So that's the situation. And again, I really think it's crucial that some of us become mavens here in senior services because without that knowledge, we can't make effective policy. We are beyond the times where towns don't see themselves as having a role. I have a lot of ideas, and they may not be that we're spending money even, but there's some things we need to start doing differently, I do believe. And starting with looking at affordable housing in the form of mobile homes or taco trucks, right? That's how limited we are. Thank you.
Thank you. We're ready for the consent calendar. We have 6 items today, and the town clerk would like to acknowledge.
Small correction. Thank you, Mayor. I just want to make a correction that was added to the minutes from the January 17, 2023 Town Council meeting. That was the misspelling of Councilmember Pam Reeves in the minutes. That was on page 3, section C, section 8C of the agenda. So we just corrected her name and added the correct spelling of the first name.
All right, thank you with that. So do we have any public comment on the consent calendar? Seeing no one moving forward, do we have a motion for approval of items A through F?
Move approval of consent calendar items A through F.
Second?
We have a motion by Knight and a second by Reeves. And our vote screens will be popping up. Here they come.
I had to refresh. Did it?
And do you mind if I add it to the record?
Yeah, it's yay, but I clicked it.
You did? It did not pop on mine, but I'll add it to the record.
Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you. Now we are ready for our one presentation today, and that is a presentation by Napa County and CAL FIRE regarding staffing levels and staffing factor changes that will affect Fire Station 12, which will include an increase to the fire services fees charged to the town of Yountville. Welcome. Can you state your name for the record, please?
I can. Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. My name is Mike Marcucci. I'm the unit chief for the CAL FIRE Sonoma Lake Napa unit. But more importantly, today I'm coming to you as the fire chief of the Napa County Fire Department, which also services your town for nearly 100 years. And thank you for having me. I want to start off with a little bit of history. Napa County Fire and CAL FIRE CDF back in the day has provided fire services in the town of Yountville since the early 1930s. We started here in town until our new station was built out on Solano in 1999 when we moved out there. Currently, the station is funded by three different entities, the town of Yountville being one of them, the Veterans Home being another, and the county of Napa being the third. So all costs are split 3 equal ways between the parties. Staffing at Station 12 has remained pretty static since the late 80s, early 90s at the four firefighters per day. And so we're looking for to talk about the increase to that as well here today. Finally, as far as this, the fire service leadership that has been provided by CAL FIRE. There's no battalion chiefs currently funded by the county through our contract, and so those are all state employees that have been providing that through cooperative fire protection since the contract started. So the big question is, what has changed? And a number of things have changed in the fire service, especially in this Napa Valley here in the last 8 years, as you are all well familiar with. But ultimately, as an industry, the industry standard, which is referred out of NFPA 1710, has increased the number of firefighters that are needed at a structure fire. That number stands at 16 to effectively suppress a fire in a 2,000 square foot single-family residence. It goes up exponentially with different sizes of structures, commercial buildings, et cetera. Currently on duty today in the Napa County Fire Department, there are 14 firefighters, and that is spread between the 2 firefighters on each piece of equipment at Yountville, 3 at Napa and St. Helena, and 4 at Greenwood Ranch down in the South County area. One of the things that the county, working with CAL FIRE, has decided is to level that out to 3 firefighters per engine for a total of 15 per day, plus the battalion chief that would be on duty would be a total of 16 to meet that mandate, and that's one of the reasons for this increase. Going a little further into that, one of the challenges that we're faced daily, especially in Yountville, being as your motto is the heart of the Napa Valley, we're right in the middle of our response area to either go north, south, east, or west from the town here. We do get multiple incidents at times between the Veterans Home, the town, the highway that's traveling through. It's a busy station, and what could happen, and does happen routinely, is if one of the apparatus is on a call and another call comes in, potentially for a structure fire, especially if there's not a known rescue, which could happen in any one of the restaurants here, for example, in the middle of the night if they had a fire, we would have to wait until we had 4 firefighters at scene to be able to make an interior attack on that. That's what we call our 2-in, 2-out standard. So what would happen is we potentially are waiting for additional firefighters to arrive. We're doing work. We're not standing on the curb, obviously. We're doing work. We're softening the building. We're prepping it for that interior attack. With the addition of a 3rd firefighter onto the engine and the battalion chief arriving, we can go to work immediately. Even more, and it was just mentioned in public comment, the community is not getting any younger in the Napa Valley. And that demographic is causing us to go to more medical aids than we've ever gone to before. And if we do have an instance as a heart attack or somebody stops breathing, we usually have to send both of the Yountville pieces of equipment to get 4 firefighters at scene to basically do effective CPR on patients that we have here. That takes both companies out of service, which precludes the next incident from being handled in a lot faster fashion. We have to wait for another engine to come, potentially either from the city or from St. Helena, potentially, or one of our volunteer companies, maybe in Rutherford. So by increasing those amount of personnel on duty allows us to do much, much more. You'll see a much quicker return on investment, if you will. Along those lines, CAL FIRE Local 2881, which is our labor group that represents all CAL FIRE firefighters, has recently negotiated with the governor's office a new contract. And so with that came some increases to salaries and benefits. They are very, very deserving of that. They work extremely hard, as you have all seen on the news and everything else. And so that gets reflected into our contracts for cooperative fire protection, such as with the town. The other thing that comes along with that contract is a potential reduced work week. Currently, our firefighters work the longest work week in the nation at 72 hours a week. The average is 56. You would find that in the city of Napa, for example. The labor group has negotiated to a 66-hour work week starting at the end of 24, and that's working on being negotiated with the governor's office as well. In preparation for that, that is also requiring that we add additional personnel into our contracts to be able to support that reduced work week moving forward. And finally, battalion chiefs are those chief officers that run our day-to-day incidents. They're your incident commanders that are running that vehicle accident on the highway, or that structure fire in a hotel, or a hazardous materials incident. They are truly the ones that are coordinating the effort, and they're also the one that would truly interact with the town. Currently, like I mentioned earlier, since the time of the contract, this has been funded by CAL FIRE, and the state of California has paid for those employees. But as you can tell, throughout our community, our need for state-funded work as far as fuel reduction, fuel modification, and wildfire response has grown, and has taken the need for those employees to be doing different levels of work to a higher level. So we've asked that the county and ultimately fund a total of 3 battalion chiefs. The county is currently funding 2 already. We're doing a job shift to move them out of their current positions into other positions, which required 1 more battalion chief to be added. And that would be funded out of Yountville at a third. So basically, the town would fund a third of a battalion chief, and in result of that would have access to all 6, the 3 that are state funded and the 3 that would be county funded. So that would be a 1/3 contribution into that contract. One of the things that has been that I was talking to Steve Rogers about before his retire, I've spoken to John about as well, is that relationship with County Fire in the town. And I believe that there is some work to be done there. I believe that having a dedicated battalion chief here to Yountville would be a very large benefit to not only this community but also to the fire service in general to tie in. You know, the Yountville is a very, very important part of our system, and the activities that reside within here, I believe, could use a battalion chief to oversee that on a true full-time basis, not as a collateral duty, which it's been for all time until now. So what has not changed? The exceptional service that the town of Yountville has come to expect has not changed. Expanding that level of service stays within that model and our goal of providing that exceptional service to the town. Being able to do more with the equipment, which is top-notch, with the station that is top-notch, in this area that is also top-notch, is truly what our goal is. And while this is a significant increase, I wouldn't be mindful to say that it wasn't. This will allow us to do a very significant, a lot more work than we can now. Having 6 firefighters at scene versus 4 initially makes a world of difference. I can say that when I started in the fire service in 1990, I worked all by myself as an 18-year-old kid, and I couldn't do very much by myself, I'll be honest. And I've worked on 2-person engine companies, and I've worked on 3-person engine companies, and the difference is immense of what can be done. Something simple as walking around the building to see where the fire is actually coming from while a firefighter is hooking up the hydrant and another one is pulling the hose line. Those are 3 tasks that need to be done simultaneously, but we only have 2 people currently. So something's not being done during that time, as simple as that. The one thing that I'm most proud to tell you is the dedicated firefighters that truly enjoy working in this town. We have firefighters that don't necessarily reside in the Napa Valley. As we just heard, it is getting a little more expensive to live here every day. A lot of our firefighters commute from the Sacramento Valley and have for 30 years. Because they love working in this valley. They could easily work. CAL FIRE is everywhere from the Oregon border to the Mexican border. We're over 11,000 employees, and they choose to work here in this valley, which makes me very proud to say as the fire chief that you have people that have been here for decades. And so while they do not reside here, they are probably more local than some of your locals. And they especially know where the ins and outs of this town are, as well as the rest of the county as well, and especially the Veterans Hall or the Veterans Home, which can be somewhat of a maze. They know that as well too. So they're doing that job. They love being here, and they want to continue to serve this community in a much more capacity than they do now. And then finally, and this goes without saying, but you do have the full support of the Napa County Fire Department as well as CAL FIRE. In my position, I oversee both, and I drive through your town twice a day. I live in Napa. I work in St. Helena, and we are very mindful of what goes on in the town, and we do want to put the full power of both agencies behind the town as we move forward. So let's talk the numbers. So the town of Yountville's fire service contribution for fiscal year 23-24 would be $1,420,000 would be your third of your contribution. That is a significant increase over what you were paying last fiscal year.
How much an increase is that?
$450,000.
Okay, I thought actually it was a double, 107% increase, but I could be wrong. Okay.
Last fiscal year was $952,000.
Okay.
Was the contribution from the town. And those are top step budgeted numbers. The actuals have not come through yet, obviously, as we're still in the fiscal year. But that is what we budget at top step with full longevity and everything that an employee can earn. And normally we come underneath that. So the next step would be then for 24-25 to 1.7 million, which would be an increase of 700,000. And then we would level out. And so basically it is a very quick increase for 2 fiscal years, and then we would level out moving forward. The increase will be again for 1/3 of the battalion chief that'll be stationed at Station 12 across the highway, and 1 additional fire captain than you have now. And again in 24-25 it'll be for an additional fire captain. We need to have in the staffing model that we are required by the state now through our collective bargaining, we need to have 9 firefighters assigned to the engine, 3 per day. And so that allows us for that relief. We used to have a relief shift that was an additional cost, but we've absorbed that into this contract. So while there is an increase, there is somewhat of a savings in that with that increased number. So in summary, by the time that fiscal year 24-25 comes around, the town will be funding 6 full-time employees and 1/3 of a battalion chief versus the current 4 full-time employees that you're funding today. And that's pretty much the presentation, and we can back that up if you want to see the numbers again, and I'm happy to take any questions or concerns that you may have.
Well, I'm ready to start unless somebody else is. I have a whole series of questions.
Yes,
so.
Mayor.
You can go first then.
Okay, let's go back to these numbers. So right now, for what the county charges us for the CAL FIRE services is $952. Okay, and that's EMS included.
That's everything, yes.
That's everything.
That's the full-service fire station.
And so then we would, well, let me back up even farther. When will this be finally negotiated? I understand, did you say that Napa County is negotiating with the governor's office in Sacramento?
No, our labor group had. No, so Napa County as the holder of the contract did the negotiation with CAL FIRE. This kind of came upon everybody a little sudden, and I know that's a concern with some of you that this was kind of last minute, and I would agree with you. And I would be anything but transparent if I didn't agree with you. What had happened was our latest contract, when it came through, we started working towards what the metric looked like for our staffing model moving forward. And so therefore it's been a little bit rushed. This came around in around late November or so is when we started to put the numbers together. With that, as the increases came, we needed to wait for January to come so we could get from the Department of General Services and Cal HR what those raises actually were. So we had some numbers to actually sit down with the CEO's office at the county and actually have a discussion. We didn't have the numbers, and so now we do. So we're really about 3 months into this right now, and so it is late. A lot of our contracts are in their 2nd or 3rd year right now, and they weren't having this kind of a rush right now, but the contract is up June 30th. So this
the 2-year contract.
It is going to be a 2-year contract. We're coming out of a 3-year contract right now. The county's opted. The state will do a 1, 2, or 3-year contract. The 2-year is probably the sweet spot, if you will. The 3-year is something that is great. The county's opted to do a 2-year. They're doing a master study right now with AP Triton that we're hoping to get back here in the next few months to guide the county moving forward. They haven't had a document like this in quite some time. I would be honest that the county is also potentially looking at another provider down the road in 2 years other than CAL FIRE. And they are looking at that. Again, as the current provider, I would be whatever the county would like to do, we will support. CAL FIRE is not going anywhere from the county. I've got my 8 engines that are state funded throughout the county right now, so we're not going anywhere anytime soon. As far as our agency goes, if we don't contract for Napa County Fire Services, then the next provider we will help transition in. So that's why they're asking for a 2-year deal, a 2-year contract to see what that looks like moving forward.
Okay, so I'm trying to get my calculator out and listen really hard here,
Okay.
too. So do you happen to have a percentage in addition to the numbers? So it looks like right now, if we're paying $952 and just in year one going to 1.42, that's about almost $500,000, so roughly 30.
I've got about 450 on that. Right now, the contract for Yountville is $4.26 million moving forward. You divide that by 3.
Yeah, I'm just doing the percent year one.
I don't have the percentages with me, Mayor, I'll be honest with you.
I'll just kind of, so it looks like at least about a 30%.
I'll believe your numbers.
Okay.
Mayor, may I ask you something or make a suggestion that I just want to, it's difficult to reconcile because our finance director in the report said our current cost is $733,000 and the increase is 107%. So there's a big difference between 30 and 107. So that's why I was asking my question.
Okay, let's talk to Director King.
Yes, thank you. If I could clarify, Councilmember Tripp, the number that I was comparing to was the actuals for fiscal year 21-22. So that's not this current year, it's a year prior. We have budgeted for the current year $984,000. I'm hearing now that it should actually be $952. But we don't have any invoices in this current year. We're typically billed twice a year, once for July through December and then once January through June. Okay. So we don't have any actuals that we could kind of estimate for the current fiscal year. So we compared it to the last actual year, which was 21-22.
Okay, I missed that. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going with year one of the 2-year contract, a 30% increase. And then once again, for year two, what were those numbers?
We'll be at 1,769,225, so 1.8 million.
So we're going from 1.4 to 1.8. That's another 400. So that's almost another 20% if I'm thinking correctly. So, and I just have to say, that's, so those increases are, let's see, about, let's say 500 in year one, and then another so almost $1 million. And the point I want to make, just because it's a state of fact, our, income is about $13 million. So we're talking about $1 million, which, it's just really a very large number for Yountville right now. So now I want to, that said, I think that's where a lot of our questions will be coming from and our concerns. So right now, this is still ongoing negotiations with Napa County.
Not necessarily ongoing. So this is the model that the county has chosen to move with. We've already gotten the Veterans Home is on board as well. We've been talking with them as the third party in this, and the county is on board as it stands now. So there's really not a negotiation in your current, in the sense of where we can negotiate salaries and such. These are fixed salaries that our employees earn with CAL FIRE. It's more of a, how many employees do you want for each model? And so, which we have determined to be ultimately 6 captains and 12 engineers to get to the 18 number that we need in 2024.
So just to be direct, you're saying kind of take it or leave it. This is what we've got.
Not necessarily, but I could see where you'd say that. Sure. I mean, this is the model. And if we really got down to being frank, the town is paying for 6 firefighters and you're receiving 18 in return. And so, it is a 1/3 of investment. So a normal engine company for CAL FIRE is $2.4 million a year for one engine. That's what like the St. Helena engine would cost, or the Napa engine. And we're asking for, basically 6 out of that 9 to be funded by the town. So if you were to do it yourself, for example, because that's the next question probably, is you'd have to build a facility, you'd have to purchase a fire engine, which I think the last one we just purchased is right around $1 million, and then you'd have to staff the fire engine with, if you wanted to stay with the current model, 6 people, which is what we're asking you to pay for now, and then you'd have to have a full-time chief. Putting numbers in somewhat of relevance, the city of Calistoga is advertising a fire chief for $240,000 a year, and so.
Okay, so just a little more for clarity in terms of me and as well as the public. So all these numbers really kind of came about the very first of the year. You mentioned January. And then there was no negotiation. It was really, this is what really kind of came out.
The county put an ad hoc together with 2 board of supervisors, Supervisor Ramos and Pedroza, and the CEO's office, as well as myself and our county council that represents the fire department through the county. And we brought this forward with what our staffing model looks like. To dive in a little deeper, for example, our Greenwood Ranch Station is currently staffed with 4 firefighters because we have CSA Area 3 down in the airport district. That has changed. The demographics have changed in South County to where we don't believe that we operationally need those. So the county has shifted some of those personnel up towards Yountville as well, and which keeps us right at this number of 1/3. And so the county has taken that direction to lower that staffing level to raise the staffing level on the other engines as well. So it was really more of a discussion than a negotiation.
Okay, and there was no discussion about going over, since it is such a big increase over 3 years, that.
So the issue we have right now is CAL FIRE has said that with our 66-hour work week, we need to be at 3 firefighters assigned to each seat, if you will, moving forward to get to that total of 9 by 2024 to support the new work week. We'd have basically not enough people to move forward with that work week if we didn't have that by then.
This is pretty much CAL FIRE Sacramento you're referring to, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the California Department of Forestry. Yeah.
Okay, I'll quit asking questions for now.
No.
Turn
And so
it over
I want to add one more if I can to you, though, a little more context,
all right.
which is why we have phased this in over 2 years. So the county on the other engines is doing this on July 1st. Because of this significant increase to Yountville, we chose to break this out over 2 years. This would have been potentially the 1.7 this fiscal year, which I didn't think was palatable. I didn't think that was fair. I didn't think that was the right thing to do. And so we talked about that. And that's why there's the 1 capped in this fiscal year and the 1 capped in next fiscal year to try to split that up a little bit. And if I could, I would drag that out even further. But through our contractual obligations.
Me too.
Right, no, I understood, Mayor. I get it. Yeah.
All right, I'll turn it around. Okay, Councilmember Tripp, questions?
Recognizing our job is to advocate for the residents of Yountville, which is a very small town, 1.5 miles square and 1,500 homes. So we're now at $1.5 million, looking at $1,000 per home basically for fire coverage. So of course this has nothing to do with the value of your work or the importance, but our job is, Yountville should pay for Yountville's services. I mean, that's just sort of how it works. So my question is, are you then involved in the study that the county is doing for alternative approaches? Or who is spearheading that? I kind of heard you say you wear a county hat and a CAL FIRE hat.
I do. I wear both, yes.
Okay, and so are you participating in that? Or?
So the master study that's going on right now is a study of CAL FIRE providing the service to the county. I'm very involved in that.
Okay.
And then I have some of my leadership team behind me with Jason Martin as our deputy fire chief. He's spearheading that operation. The feasibility study that the county is looking to do, we probably will not be involved in other than to provide current data that we already have for the AP Triton study to not potentially muddy the waters, if you will, to what that looks like moving forward.
Okay, in terms of alternatives. And I'll just be really frank. We, as a council, I believe, the first we heard of this was a month ago, roughly, March 15th. We were expecting, of course, some cost of living adjustments and whatnot, but this was a very significant budget increase. And late in the day. And so when I spoke with some of the town staff about, well, does CAL FIRE have no concern about us looking for alternatives and the like, because it's a lot for a town of 1,500 homes, especially given, and 3,000 people, of which 600 are at the vet's home and being covered elsewhere. So we're really talking about fire services for about 2,400 people and 1,500 homes. So anyway, the town staff person has told me, trying to negotiate is not particularly fruitful because CAL FIRE really is not that worried about losing this contract. They have plenty of places, and I'm just being frank, to move their folks, and is that the case, that there's really not a concern about keeping this services for Yountville? Or do you see what I'm saying when I ask, well, surely we must be able to have a discussion, and the answer was not really.
No, I think you're talking about two different things. You're talking about an emotional connection with the town. You're also talking about a business decision.
I'm more on the business decision.
So the business decision, if the Yountville decided to go a different direction, then the county and the vet's home would have to take over the full load of the contract.
Right.
The hard part of it is the veterans home is in the town limits, but we would still, under contract with the vet's home, be able to provide that service. We would have to increase that. Our employees would be potentially not moved at all because we still need to maintain that level of service on those two pieces of equipment.
What if the county, though, were to transfer their contract to another provider entirely?
Then roughly the 65 full-time employees that are funded by the county would be absorbed by the state. We're a very large organization, and we operate on a 10% vacancy, which is about 1,500 people.
Okay,
so I would be able to absorb them into state service.
So the assessment that it's not a contract that CAL FIRE necessarily wants to negotiate with us because you have, right, you would be fine if we went elsewhere. Is that an accurate assessment on a business level?
I think that on a business level, yes. The context I think you're trying to portray, though, I take somewhat issue with, where business-wise, yes, we would be able to absorb the employees if the county decided to go with a different a vendor, if you will, a different provider. This is the second oldest contract, I believe, in CAL FIRE, and we started in 1926 as the fire warden's position. I think we missed Tehama County by 2 weeks because their board meeting was 2 weeks before ours in Napa. That is not something we want to lose. But we also believe that our employees deserve to provide a level of service at a level of operational ability that we believe is what this model is. So we will not take on a contract at the cost of our employees' wellness.
And has there been, and then I'll stop, I know quarterly I was looking up the average from the last report that we got, which is always very helpful. Quarterly, its average over the last 5 years is about 100 visits for Yountville, the emergency services visits, and about 200 for the vets. And so I guess I was just trying to assess whether there has been problems in the past with the level of service, or in other words, in most business, if it's not broken, you're suggesting maybe we haven't had adequate resources, I think, for a good level of service. And I don't get that sense, or I've never heard that before.
So the question of 100 visits, what does that mean?
EMS visits, which is virtually the primary. I'm just going on what...
that was probably for that quarter.
Right, exactly.
Okay, yeah,
right.
so
for the last 5 years, that's the average. It was 100 for Yountville, right, and 200 for the vet's home. And then I would say less than 10 other incidents in Yountville.
So the station runs about 1,400 calls a year, maybe a little more than that. And the vet's home, the numbers are somewhat skewed, I'll just say that, because the ambulance goes there. Since they lost their ability to be a hospital, the ambulance does go up there regularly throughout the day without the fire department response, because those are transfers. Our command center in St. Helena counts those as incident numbers into the vet's home. So there's a little bit of an asterisk next to it. I just wanted to point that out to you. When I looked at the numbers, because there was concern of that, when Mr. Rogers, asked me about that, he says, his concern was, the vet's home should be paying much more than that. And the difference in the call volume is almost minimal. It's maybe within 10 or 15%. It's not where we're going 5 times to the vet's home and once into the town. That wasn't the case. And I wanted to make sure of that myself, and that truly was not the case. Okay. Does the vet's home generate more business? Absolutely, it does.
Well, and I just ask you to take a look at the last quarterly report, which had that graph with the 5-year figures. I just pulled it up today.
Okay.
And the visits were twice, or whatever metric they were reporting.
Right, and that's something we'll clean
and
up,
so
because
maybe,
the ambulances, it's not Napa County Fire responding, there's the ambulance as well. And so,
okay,
anyway,
so I'm just going on the report that we got. So sorry if I got that wrong.
So
but,
what I'm looking at is more of like an insurance policy. The downtown in Yountville, I was here at your last council meeting when you were speaking about the French Laundry expanding and such, right? And people come to the town to see the French Laundry. They come here for tourism. Tourism is a big boon in the Napa Valley, not just in the town, obviously. And so one of the things that I look at is how do we project that ability to be able to have that return on investment and save those properties if there was a fire. We've had fires in the town. They have been somewhat destructive, and they have been to where that business now is unable to produce taxes, and there's people that potentially may not visit the town because of those businesses are not open for business. And and we look at the TOT taxes and all those types of things. It truly is an insurance policy to protect those assets as well. And I also look at it as, what is a life cost to be able to effectively revive a citizen or a member of the community, a resident here in the town? That's an open-ended question. I don't, I look at it that. I know that the level of service that we are going to be providing will be the standard in Napa County, except for the town of Calistoga, which chooses to remain with 2 firefighters. And so that's one of the things that across the board, we believe that's the level of service.
Okay. Well, and I'd just like to close by, none of these comments reflect on, in my view, the value of what you all do. I'm just trying to represent Yountville. So
we don't take it personally at all, Council Member. We truly, this is the business, and we understand that. So thank you.
I have a couple of questions just on your presentation. You were talking about that you have 2 pieces of equipment at that station, right?
Correct.
And then if you have 3 people and a captain or a battalion chief to make 4, you were talking about if there's an incident on the highway and then there's an incident in town and then somebody has a heart attack, there's still nobody left over to go to those 3 incidents, right? There's no other piece of equipment.
No. So Napa County Fire Department staffs 5 pieces of equipment a day, plus our 9 volunteer companies. We also have automatic aid agreements with the city of Napa and the town of St. Helena and Calistoga as well. So if we had an incident on the highway, we have another piece of equipment moving up to Yountville to cover. This is one of our must-cover areas. So, for example, if we had a vehicle accident that they're handling, we broke a fire in town, that's going to have a significant response of 16 firefighters to it from those additional response areas as well to come and assist. And we have 3 pieces of equipment. We have a fire engine, a ladder truck, and a rescue truck as well that is cross-staffed by the ladder truck to be able to go to those wrecks on the highway, for example, or if they have to go into the hills, the ladder truck probably isn't the best choice to drive around the hills of Dry Creek.
Right.
So we take the rescue. So.
And then in the graph that showed the salary breakouts, in the people who are staffing the fire trucks, there's no differential between someone who might have EMT education, or is every firefighter an EMT as well?
For Napa County Fire, our firefighters are EMTs.
Okay.
So no, there's no differential for that level of service. Because that's the minimum.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Councilmember McKee, you have some questions?
Thank you. So the apparatus engineers are the EMTs and vice versa?
Captains and engineers and battalion chiefs are all EMTs. I'm an EMT as the fire chief.
Okay.
So,
Well,
if anything happened here, we got you covered.
That makes me feel better. We do value your service. What exactly is extended duty week compensation? Is that for the additional hours?
Yeah, that's the Fair Labor Standard Act. So a regular employee would work a 40-hour work week. For the fire department, we work a 72-hour work week. So anything above the 53-hour work week becomes what they considered extended duty. It's 19 hours of overtime. It's planned overtime each week. In a municipal fire department, they work a 56-hour work week, so there's 3 hours of overtime built into that. So ours is 19 to cover that differential.
That's your figure. Then when you were going over the slide that's currently up, you were talking about the next 2 years, we're going to get the 30% and then around approximate 20%. After that, it would level out, but aren't we subject to a 2-year contract? So
the contract would be reopened again for the fiscal year of 25-26. The only thing at that point, the staffing level would be in place. The only thing would be the potential COLA that you had mentioned earlier. What the labor group is able to negotiate from the governor's office is out of my control as well.
So no guarantees.
No guarantee. No guarantees whatsoever.
Can you guarantee that we'll get news of any additions before March 15th after the March 1st deadline?
And Councilmember, that is truly, and I was speaking earlier with John, and I think that is one of our biggest priorities is to include that at an earlier date. And like I said, we were really remiss and we were really late in getting the numbers ourselves. And I'll throw myself on my own sword, if you will. Like I said, I've had these numbers for 3 months, and so for us to get to the point where we are now took us about a month and a half, almost 2 months of meeting with the ad hoc committee to get to that point to work this out. We had some issues with CSA 3 as well that we had to work through, some internal county challenges that we had to work through as well. So I will give you Mike Marcucci's stamp of guarantee that we will bring the town in as the earliest convenience that we can when we have numbers to actually discuss for the next contract moving forward.
That's important so we can plan ahead. And
Absolutely.
knowing that you're wearing both hats between the county and CAL FIRE is important because we hear about communication challenges. So I know you have a big job.
No, and we look forward to solving some of those challenges. I look forward to partnering with the town and seeing what we can do to meet those challenges and solve them. And this is a very old relationship that we've had with the town. Like I said, we're nearing 100 years, and it is near and dear to our hearts. You know, it is truly the heart of our fire department, and it has been. This is kind of where it started, and I think we've been remiss in the past few years in that relationship, and we're going to fix that.
And we will have an assigned dedicated battalion chief?
Yeah, so the county is a regional delivery model. So to say that person's never going to leave Yountville, I would be remiss in saying that. But they're going to cover what we call our Battalion 6, which is everything basically from the South County area up to here for incidents. But they'd be based out of Yountville Station at Station 12, just right across the road. That's where they'd be based. That's where they'd be sleeping, and their office would be. So.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And you have that now, but that's a state-funded battalion chief who really is out doing all the work that they need to do in addition to taking care of the county fire responsibility. So we're going to deepen that pool.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Fire Chief Martucci, for your report. So just for clarity, in terms of summary, we'll be starting, you've negotiated with the county and CalVet for a contract that will start on July 1 in 2023 for 2 years. And generally, in terms of the reporting time, you're saying that this contract has started, that we're in the end of a 2-year contract now, but usually about 7 months or so before the end of the contracts, then you get numbers from the state that begin the process for the negotiation? Or?
That's correct. And so we're at the end of a 3-year contract right now. And the county normally would do a 3-year contract, but they really want to see what this master study has to say, and they want some time to do a feasibility study, which we support. We truly believe, I believe, this is my 34th fire season with CAL FIRE, and I truly believe that the county won't be able to find a provider that can provide the level of service that CAL FIRE does. For example, the fire stations, once you leave the valley, are all owned by CAL FIRE, and we're operating out of those stations. So the county would potentially have to build 5 firehouses, and property is really going cheap here in the Napa Valley, to build those firehouses. And so we really think that that's going to be a big lift. But we want the county to go through that drill and partner along with their stakeholders as well to see what that looks like moving forward. So they do know what the value is of either what we currently have or what they could have. And we welcome that feasibility study and we'll partner with them as much as they need us to. That's why they chose the 2-year contract. The 3-year is probably the most ideal, and I think they'll maybe look at doing that again moving forward. We also have the ability to do a 1-year extension twice from the state through Department of General Services. Any one of our contracts can be extended twice. With just if there's a contract change in there as far as a COLA or something, we wouldn't have to go back to the table and do the paperwork all over again. We could extend that potentially, which is an option. So we do get the numbers from Cal HR, from our human resources at the state of California is what I should say, based on what the collective agreement is for the bargaining unit for CAL FIRE firefighters, to see what that cost is. And then we basically get a simple spreadsheet, which we can absolutely share with your finance manager, if you like, or your finance director, to look at what that looks like moving forward. But we will have those numbers as soon as we can. Like I said, this year we were just very, very late because the contract was not ratified by the legislature until November, and I don't think we got the numbers until January. Long answer to a short question. I apologize.
I appreciate it. Thank you. So you have 2 hats, just to clarify, you have 2 hats as a CAL FIRE, fire chief, county. In terms of the negotiations, when you start that process, are you being contacted after you receive the numbers? Are you contacting the county, and then you're communicating with Calvet, or
Correct.
are you a part of that negotiation in terms
Correct.
with them?
Yeah, so I had a Teams meeting with Calvet in Sacramento, and they had to do a budget change proposal to their process as well to get that money moved. The way it works, that's the only veterans home in California that has to pay for fire protection, because most of them are in a town that is already providing fire protection, not through contract like Yountville is. So they basically, it gets treated like a large convalescent home, if you will, and they don't really pay for fire protection. So we're kind of a one-off for Calvet. And so we walked through that with their assistant director of Calvet and explained the process to her and her team. And we're still having ongoing meetings looking for, it's a state agency, and so there's potentially a way that the state agency can work with CAL FIRE as another state agency, and potentially, what does that look like for that? Same costs, but is there a simpler way of doing business, if you will, direct to direct for them. And so that is potentially what that looks like for them. And they have, like I said, we have a tentative approval. We're just waiting for that final from them.
You're still the part of this contract, the 2 years, is still kind of in the final negotiation. Then,
I wouldn't call it the negotiation. It's just their process to approve.
They're going through the
final
process
approval.
of getting the approvals, which I understand.
And this hasn't gone to
time.
the board either. So this is all basically something that's it's going to be agendized, I believe, for the mid-May or early June board meeting as well,
board.
And the board of supervisors,
as well.
So.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate your report. Thank you.
We have a few last questions and a couple comments.
Okay.
So when our revenues in the town were probably half of what they are now, not that long ago, we used to put money away because anytime you needed to buy a fire truck, we'd have to come up with a third of that cost. So is that still how it works, that if you do buy, or is this all inclusive?
I'd have to. Now that's where the county, because the contract is with the county, and I am
Correct.
not an expert in the county contracting process, but I do believe that it is a small portion of the replacement cost of the fire engine. The county basically does engines for cash costs themselves out of their budget, and then I believe and don't quote me, but I believe it's I think it's $20,000 for the engine, and I think it's $20,000 for the truck. But I'm not positive on what that
we used to
contract
pay
looks like.
a lot more.
Yeah, and I think that has changed, but don't quote me on that.
Okay.
I'll have to check that for you. You got me. I don't
All
know
right.
the answer.
Well, since I got you there, you did volunteer to kind of provide some numbers, so I'm going to agree that staff would like to have those. So if you could forward those, and any information you could find out about cost of trucks, because if we need to, sometimes if we have unassigned fund balances, we might need to.
And I think the ladder truck has already been purchased.
Right.
The new ladder truck, and the new engine has too.
Right.
So if
I know
we didn't come to you for a bill, I think we're okay so far. And
Okay.
John may, unless I'm missing something.
Yeah.
The current amendment to our agreement includes amount for operation and maintenance in the range of $750,000 to $790,000. That dates back to 2018 when this was adopted, but it also included a line item for engine replacement at $18,000
Okay.
per year.
Okay. Per year.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're doing it
pretty
on an
good guess,
annual
huh?
basis instead of every 7 years. We need to find $500,000 or whatever it used to be when you bought your ladder truck. It was quite expensive. I remember that.
They are not. They are getting more expensive as we go.
I can imagine. So, and I just want to, I've got a couple comments, but one additional comment. I just really want to put this in perspective for mostly, our residents and our businesses. So in Yountville, just this year, before these new numbers came up, our property taxes were just sufficient to fund police, fire, and EMS. And so now we're going back the other direction, that our property taxes will no longer be able to cover that. So my point to the businesses and the residents is, this is where your property taxes go. And we don't even have enough of that now to fund our public emergency services with those. So just kind of stating the fact. And also, I think we met up at LAFCO
We did.
Again, and I recognize you guys you don't have your suits on tonight, but you were there too. So what we haven't finalized that, but I think it will become final. We're going to do a countywide fire and EMS municipal service review likely. So we would definitely like to leverage what the county is doing with their numbers and look at it regionally throughout the valley. So again, you volunteered to bring us some of your numbers, so that will be coming too. And I think that will be a very useful document for the whole Napa County.
I would agree with you, and we've also got the AP Triton study for all three, the American Canyon Fire District, the city of Napa, and now the county.
Right.
All that information is very, very fresh.
Right.
So.
Because we haven't done it since 2004.
Correct.
Yeah, so it's very old.
And the AV Trident study covers basically, it's not the feasibility study that
Correct.
we talked about. It just in a nutshell, 2 sentences, what will it say?
A master study of what fire services look like moving forward for Napa County.
And does it look at costs or whatnot?
Do you want to say something?
Quality, costs, that's the issue. Okay. And when will that be done?
I'm hoping by June.
Okay, thank you.
It's a pretty complex. They've told us that Napa County is one of the most complex fire service delivery systems in the country, so it's taking a little extra time.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming. You've given us a lot of information and answers to our questions, and we appreciate your time and your supporting staff behind you there.
All right. You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Now you are welcome to leave because now we're going to start talking about the budget, but you're welcome to stay as well. So I'll give you a couple minutes if anybody would like to exit the room. All right. So now we will have Finance Director Celia King come forward, and we are going to be discussing fiscal year 23-24 budget development update and discussion. And I always like to remind the council, this is what I like to call budget discussion number 1, and we might have 2. We definitely will have 2, maybe 3 more. So this is where we are in the process. So with that, it's all yours.
Yes. Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and Town Council. Today we are providing an update on the development of the fiscal year 23-24 proposed budget. We presented the budget parameters to the Town Council in the beginning of February. The purpose of this report is to point out some of the significant changes that have occurred between then and now in regard to those original preliminary estimates for major revenues and expenditures. The other purpose of this report this item is to provide the Town Council with an opportunity to have a budget conversation in a public meeting environment where specific ideas, initiatives, and priorities for the upcoming fiscal year can be discussed. The resulting input from the Town Council discussion will allow for staff to work on determining costs associated with these initiatives that can then be presented at the budget workshops. So starting with key revenues, transient occupancy tax is the largest revenue source in the general fund. It was originally projected at $7.5 million for fiscal year 23-24, which is on par with what we expected to collect in the current fiscal year. However, as we monitor the tourism trends in the current fiscal year and are seeing that TOT may possibly exceed the $7.5 million revenue estimate, we have increased the revenue projection for fiscal year 23-24 slightly, up to $7.775 million. As TOT revenue projections increased a bit, this also means that the projected revenue for Measure S, Affordable and Workforce Housing Fund, has also increased slightly from $625,000 to about $648,000, so another $23,000 roughly. Both sales tax and property tax revenue projections remain the same at this time. We did add $40,000 of grant revenue into the general fund as the planning department was able to secure a grant from the California Energy Commission for the purchase and implementation of Solar App Plus software to streamline solar permitting. The cost for this purchase and implementation is also included in the Planning Department expenditures. Other notable expenditure increases include the cost of fire services, as we just heard about from Chief Maracucci. The estimated expenditures of $1.4 million, again, just to clarify, are about $700,000 more than the actuals for fiscal year 21-22. We have been asking for an invoice for the current fiscal year. We have not received it yet. They're trying to generate it and get it to us, and that'll give us a better estimate of what we think this fiscal year actual cost may be. As the chief mentioned, the actual costs historically have come in lower than what the estimated budget was. For example, in fiscal year 21-22, I think the original budget was around $800,000, and the final cost was less than $700,000. So there was some savings there. That savings does go into general fund unassigned fund balance. Okay, contributions to the other post-employment benefits, or OPEB, and pension rate stabilization plan, or PRSP trusts, were originally calculated at 5% of projected salaries. While this calculation remains the same for the contribution to the PRSP trust, the contribution to the OPEB trust is now calculated at 2.5% of projected salaries. This represents a reduction to this expenditure of about $104,000. Based on the current MOUs with the employee bargaining groups, full-time employees will receive a cost of living adjustment as of July 1 based on the January Consumer Price Index adjustment. This information was released in mid-February and reflects an adjustment of 4.6%. So full-time salaries in the proposed budget have been increased accordingly. We have also received estimates from CIRA regarding our annual premiums for liability, workers' compensation, and property insurance. Based on this information, liability and workers' compensation insurance premiums have been budgeted with a 10% increase over prior year actuals, and property tax with a 15% increase over prior year actuals. Some of the largest budget expenditures for the next fiscal year are the capital projects. So Public Works Department has provided a draft of the 5-year CIP that is being developed for the Town Council to review, and these, of course, will be detailed in the Public Works Budget Workshop number 3. Sorry. So again, the CIP plan shows projects, not only projects that will be included in the fiscal year 23-24 proposed budget, but also projects that are on the horizon for future fiscal years. Both of the two major reserve funds, which are the Emergency Reserve Fund and the Revenue Stabilization Reserve Fund, are meeting and exceeding the funding targets established by the fund balance policy. During Budget Workshop number 3, the Town Council can discuss possibly increasing the funding targets for these reserve funds, since the higher targets could easily be met at this time without needing additional contributions from the general fund. Along with reviewing the fund balance policy, the Town Council will also be finalizing the policy for the new Utility Enterprise Capital Projects Reserve Fund. There is currently no plan to contribute to or utilize the Utility Enterprise Capital Projects Reserve Fund in fiscal year 23-24. Included with the staff report was a draft general fund summary showing a positive outlook. This means the general fund budget is balanced, so anticipated general fund expenditures and planned transfers are covered by expected general fund revenues. Fund balance allocations include the annual budget contingency of 5% of projected general fund expenditures. And it is estimated that the general fund will end the next fiscal year with a bit of unassigned fund balance. So again, we will be reviewing all funds and departments in more detail at the budget workshops, which will occur Thursday, May 4th at 1 p.m. and Thursday, May 18th at 1 p.m. here in the Town Council chambers. We aim to have the materials for Budget Workshop number 2, which will be on the 4th, ready for Town Council to start reviewing by early next week. And so at this time, we can answer any questions of the staff report, or council can begin discussions of possible items that you wish to see in the proposed budget.
No one's looking. I have a couple quick questions right away. So the emergency reserve fund, if I like percentages, but I also like numbers. So if we did move from 20% to 25%, because you've got our balance right now, but that's what would that amount be if we went 5% increase in emergency fund and 5% in revenue stabilization? What kind of numbers are we talking about?
So you would like to know what the 25% of general fund expenditures would be?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I think I have that number here. Give me just a moment.
I think it's in your report.
That's amount, the balance in each fund, not the amount.
Oh, gotcha.
To go 5% increase.
So, sorry, can you repeat your question? Do you want to know the 25% of general fund expenditures, what that amount would be?
No, if right now the reserve fund target is 20%, if it went to 25, how much money would be required to increase to that 5%?
Nothing at this time. So in the staff report, as Councilmember Tripp pointed out, the current balance is
25%.
$2.8 million, which equals 25% of the budgeted general fund expenditures.
So right now, we're at 25%, even
Right
though
now.
the target is 20,
Correct.
in summary. Yeah.
Correct.
So, and that is also true for the revenue stabilization fund.
Yes, the revenue stabilization fund is actually over 36% of
Okay, got it
TOT
now.
revenues.
All right.
Even though the target is 25.
25, correct.
So the OPEB is just 2.5% is what you're anticipating.
Yes.
Okay. And
as I recall-
PRSP is 5%.
Correct.
Right. Those are my questions for now. I think Vice Mayor Knight had some questions.
Okay.
Thank you, Director King. I appreciate this report too, because I think it's really new, this kind of transition, this report between our first budget meeting and the second one. I appreciate this because it really helps us kind of focus on the conversation, and your summary is it's appreciated. Thank you. So I just what I noted is that, I mean, we're talking about the reserve funds, and that discussion in terms of talking about those percentages will be at our meeting on May 18th.
Yes.
So when you talk about going from like the current target for emergency reserve is at 20 and going to 25, I was trying to remember in our last budget year, we had 20 was a percentage, and was 25 what staff was recommending we move to that was discussed in the previous year's budget?
I believe so, yes.
And the same with the revenue stabilization, was that 5%? Okay. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it now because I look forward to that meeting kind of reviewing our fiscal policy and really having a conversation about, keeping these funds, the need to keep them at the funds we are. I support their recommended percentage increases, but I think if we have 6% additional revenue in the revenue stabilization, I think we're finding from our conversations, hearing from the fire chief, that we'll need to move funds to other maybe locations. So in our budget, so I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to that conversation. And you were just asking generally for projects. And I was wondering in terms of when's the appropriate time with a new town manager, and we've added new staff through COVID. I think it's appropriate for us to plan a town hall or open town hall meeting or open house for town council for the community in the next fiscal year or next half year. That's my suggestion now, but I assume at our first general fund or general fund revenue conversation, we can bring up other suggestions as well. Is that what you're suggesting too now, or would you like to hear more of those today? Or
I would say that probably talking about them today will give staff a little bit of time, if needed, to prepare for the budget workshops, if possibly we need to find out what kind of costs are associated with the ideas that you're presenting.
okay, thank you.
Councilmember Reeves, did you have some?
I'll let Hillary go.
Councilmember Tripp?
I had a question and then a suggestion for the budget ideas. So my question is just on the, and I think it's great that we're overfunded at 36% on the revenue stabilization reserve. But I'm just curious how that happens. Is that because, and the target was 25, we put more in the budget last year? I'm just trying to figure out how that happens. I know there's a simple answer, but I just wondered how that happens, that we didn't stop funding at some point.
So mostly it was the reserve was built up by use of unassigned fund balance at the end of each fiscal year.
Okay.
Town council goals were to increase reserves when possible.
Okay.
And so unassigned fund balance is a prime use,
okay.
is reserves.
So it happens more when we have an unassigned fund balance than a part of the budget. In other words, we're going to put X amount in on the budget. Okay.
Correct. I don't think we have actually had a planned contribution into these reserve funds in quite a few fiscal years. It has always been at the end of the fiscal year if there's unassigned fund balance.
Okay. And I really apologize. My iPad is ringing, but I couldn't figure out how to turn it off, so I'm really sorry. And then in terms of, and I've mentioned this idea a couple times, and we just haven't had a venue for me to get a sense of whether anyone else is interested, but I'm a big supporter of the idea of a increased subsidy or a free option for the Golden Ticket program for the Veterans Home. And it's been expressed to me that perhaps just a open-ended subsidy is not a good idea, so maybe we do it based on the first 50 people. I think the tuition now is $100, so 50 people is not a huge amount, or whatever our Park and Rec department feels we could absorb realistically, because I don't think it's really a matter of the money. 50 people coming at $100 is $5,000, but maybe it has some programmatic implications, but that's something that I have actually heard from the vets, and I've said this before, 50% of the vets live below the poverty line, and half their income has to go for their support up there. So $100 is, for some of the vets, a significant expenditure. So I would like to introduce that concept into the budget. And that's the end of my comments. And thank you but I did want to say I really liked this, not having been here before, but I think I heard Eric say the summary is new, as well as the memo. It's kind of like a dashboard. It was just a one-page, you could look at it, and I really liked that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Reeves.
I have a question. I asked this to you before, but maybe you could re-explain to me the $600,000 unassigned fund balance that you're projecting for the year 23-24. At one point you said that it might be a carryover from this year versus if we assign our unassigned fund balance this year, would nothing transfer into that and then we wouldn't have any unassigned fund balance?
So when you say this year, do you mean the current fiscal year that we are in?
Yeah.
So on the draft general fund summary that's included, you see that at the end of this fiscal year, we are estimating about $564,000 of unassigned fund balance. That is that's kind of rolled up into the $624,000 unassigned fund balance, because in the next fiscal year, the proposed fiscal year, that amount hasn't been finalized and reallocated. So once that's finalized and reallocated, When we're then doing the estimated for 23-24, you will see that 564, if that's the amount that it ends up being. You will see that manifest in its approved allocations, which will then change this estimated 624,000. So yes, does that answer the question?
Yep,
Okay.
that's it. Thank you. And so we're going to discuss what was on 10A at our next meeting, so I won't bring that up now. But the discussion that, or the policy that you're going to set around the utility enterprise capital budget reserve fund, how do you come up with that policy without input from the council, or is this the time to give input?
So that was drafted back in October when the new fund was suggested to be established. It was drafted by the town manager, I believe, in connection with the town attorney. So that was presented to town council at that time, and I don't think council had any comments on the policy at that time, but it can be reviewed prior to the budget workshops if that's what you're that's what you're asking.
Well,
if you'd like to see
I'll
it prior.
look at it and then.
Okay. Yeah, it was included in the staff reports in October, and
Okay.
I can forward those if you'd like to review.
All right.
But Mayor, that conversation about that policy for the utility enterprise capital project will be part of our conversation on the May 18th meeting. So
Correct.
I mean, it may be a work in progress, basically, to define its use. So,
And that, again, that was established with some unassigned fund balances, which was
Correct.
a major windfall that year. So that's how that was formed.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Councilmember McKee Kent, questions, comments?
I have one question, but I hope it's not too off track. Consider we're going to have some more budget discussions in May, on May 2nd. But the grant that we got for broadband for 22-23, I want to know the difference between broadband and also Wi-Fi, because that is something I wanted to suggest for our capital improvements. And I know there's a cost there, but I don't know exactly how those two work together and where that cost for 23-24 would apply.
We can provide that answer. I'm not prepared to answer the difference between Wi-Fi and broadband at this time, but I know we can get that answer and provide it to you independently or to the group for future consideration.
Yeah, if we're just looking at things that we want to include on the budget, and this is the time to kind of bring that forward.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so one item that I would like for us to consider adding is some kind of a fund for undergrounding utilities. A lot of people think this is aesthetics. To me, it is safety, safety, safety. And I know we have a policy right now. We could take a look at that. But considering build out, and that's where we actually get some funds to underground any utilities that are above ground. You know, we're pretty built out. I'm not sure where we're going to get any more. And there's, still quite a few in, the residential areas. And I know to do the whole town is enormous. We're talking, 20, 30 million. But, so I'm talking about, start putting some money away in that little nest egg as we put this stuff away, it does build up. But something for the council to consider, if, again, we've got some unassigned fund balances from last year and, maybe some more this year. It might be a way to, start slowly and see where it goes. So
We do have Impact Fee Fund 46,
Right.
utility undergrounding. So we have collected a little bit of impact fees. I think we have about $146,000 in there right now.
Yeah.
And I think staff has been in discussions of if there are if the feasibility of some potential undergrounding projects in the next coming fiscal years.
And, I think there might be some grant opportunities, especially with PG&E, and that can be maybe part of our policy as well. So something on your list from me that I'm in big favor of that for safety reasons. PG&E is starting to do it out in the hills, so, the more that we can do it. I mean, we're still always going to be limited by, the car hitting a pole on Silverado Trail, but, at least, if there are more wildfires, sparks hitting a line in town, it could potentially save lives in my mind. So anyway, that's the one thing I would like to add. So any more thoughts, Councilmember Reeves?
Oh, let Eric go.
I have one more question, but go ahead.
Okay, let me go with Reeves and I'll call you.
Okay, one other item I'd like the council to consider is the idea that pedestrian-friendly landscape and conversion of the front part of Town Hall. It would require a crosswalk from the corner opposite us off of Humboldt and Yount to come straight to the Town Hall. And it would require probably the loss of one parking space along Yount Street. But there is a distinct inability for pedestrians to come from the main street of town down Humboldt or from any other place along the west side of Yount Street to get to the town hall without walking on the driveway where it's not really safe. And we have this broad entryway that's right in the middle of the entryway is the flagpole. It's very bad feng shui, if you will, and doesn't invite people to the town hall. And it feels like there's a lot of wasted opportunity in that landscaping area for picnic tables and benches and things for people to enjoy the area. We have an exterior restroom facility, so it kind of lends itself to be a more useful space and also inviting space. So that's one thing that I would like to see the council discuss about whether that's something we would like to use some of the unassigned fund balance for.
Councilmember or Vice Mayor Knight, you had a.
Just to follow up with Director King, and it goes back to our previous conversation with the fire chief. So I'm just curious in terms of your planning for our next fiscal year, as in the last 6 weeks, 2 months, we've heard about this $450,000 potential increase in our next fiscal year. How is that? How in that conversation with department heads you're planning? How has those funds? Are those funds you find available in the current revenues we'll have, or do you expect that we'll be having to make other budget changes? Just I know you still have some final numbers to get, but preliminary, in this preliminary time, I just wondered how you're been assessing and discerning how those funds will be assigned.
So those, the additional costs for fire will be covered by expected revenues in 23-24. On that general fund summary page, in the expenditure section, you'll see quite a large jump in the public safety line item. That does include the $1.4 million. Okay. So it can be covered with expected revenues.
And that's just because of what we're anticipating, just generally, which is obviously primarily usually TOT, that we'll see enough revenue increase in sales tax, TOT, property tax to just cover that in our next fiscal year.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Let me go to public comment. Do we have any comment from the public? I see one public member who's is coming to talk to us. If you could just state your name for us.
Alan Tencher, Yountville. I didn't get a chance to say anything about the fire, but if you look at the math, if we're 900,000 and we go to 1.4, that's a 50% increase. And if we go from 9 in 22, 23 to 1.8, that's a 100% increase. Those are huge numbers, and I really appreciated your comment about if we have a $13 million budget and then all of a sudden $1 million of additional expense shows up, that's a big increase. And so I think this is something that's part of this new reality. You brought up with your proclamation on climate change, part of that is just coming home to roost. And so I think the town has a fiscally conservative policy, but I think as we look to priorities, I think it's essential that we think about not only safety with undergrounding, but resiliency. And so I know there's some talk about a large water storage tank. I think things like that make a lot of sense. I think things like groundwater recharge make a lot of sense. I think microgrids make a lot of sense. We've suffered power outages. Wouldn't it be a great thing? How much would the Chamber of Commerce enjoy a situation where Napa Valley is blacked out of power and Yountville's just humming along? So I think that kind of thinking now in this new reality is not only safety but resiliency. And the more as we enter into these budget discussions, we prioritize resiliency, it's time well spent. So thank you.
Thank you for your comment, and I apologize. As soon as I went to the next item, I did forget to take public comment on the fire discussion. I think we all had a lot to say. At least my mind kind of ended, so I apologize for that. Any final comments? So does staff have sufficient direction that you're looking for?
So we would seek, at this point, we're asking if the group is giving us majority direction to add what I'll list off as the items I heard, and then if
Okay,
that's
let's
the case,
do
we'll
one by
verify.
one.
So-
And
Say one thing before you total your items, or not that you're totaling them now, but to follow up with Councilmember Tripp's idea of the golden ticket for the vets, and also to follow up with the public comment we had from Debbie Starr. What if we did have a small line item or percentage, call it Yountville Strong, if you will, where we do have funds in it kept for compassionate things, where if somebody is in dire straits, we can help them get a leg up so they're not homeless, and to continue care for well-being for the vets. 50, that's a great number to start with. But also, we are going to have other emergencies, and maybe we'll need mental health for people in the community that suffer from emergencies. So some small budget that is just about caring for our own, whatever that would look like. And then my last comment is worrying about money and TOT. I'm glad that we're able to increase it confidently for the term ahead, but I really fear that at some point that's going to level off. And I'm seeing Calistoga build beautiful new resorts. I'm seeing Napa come online like only Napa can, and I feel like we need to be really conservative there. And we've been lucky, and Yountville is an amazing product, but if our service levels, staffing at our resorts can't remain as high as they need to command $800 rooms, we just have to take a step back sometime, pat ourselves on the back for being at this high, but knowing that we can't ride it forever.
And if I could just comment to your comment, there is, if we feel that increasing the TOT, if council feels that increasing it is not a prudent choice, at the time of budget adoption in June, once we have, I think we will have at that time TOT numbers through April, which will give us a really good sense of what we're going to collect in this current fiscal year, which could point to, you know, if our projection is on point for next fiscal year. If you think that that is not conservative enough, we can pull it back during final budget adoption, I believe.
What happens if we don't meet our numbers? I mean, then we get the negative.
That doesn't happen. No.
I know.
That's not going to happen.
That's
why we have reserves.
So reserves come over to.
Yes,
Okay.
and again, the 5% annual budget contingency, that's $567,000 in this proposed budget. So it's a good place to go if we do need additional funds.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, I just want to comment on, I think that is really, I do really like that solution about, not changing our TOT projections. I know that, we've all got a lot of little wish lists here, and, sometimes that's where we can do stuff like, the utility enterprise money that we're able to add. But, those things aren't sustainable, and that's why some of these, one-offs that we always have to remember, whatever we kind of put away until, it really gets built up and we really have enough to spend, it's, and they're just sometimes one-off type of items, because if you can't sustain something, you're really not doing prudent, I think, physical planning. So, and I think everyone knows I'm always really big on our reserve funds, and right now Calistoga is wiping us off the map. Their reserve funds are way more than double of these, and that's was always my kind of secret, unspoken, like where the number I wanted to get to finally breathe a big sigh of relief. And, also really set up future councils for what some of the initiatives that they will want to do in the future. So I'm still probably going to keep pushing for more of those, and I know we've all got lots of lists. So, so right now, we can all vote on these if that would kind of help you guys kind of figure out. I think the golden ticket's probably maybe an easy one. I don't know, Sam, could you comment on that? Because I know we've done some of that in the past. I just kind of want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. So I do just want to, and I was thinking, I can bring this forward with some ideas, but I just want to point out that we do have a senior subsidy fund that is established through the Town of Yountville Community Foundation, because there's a very fine line sometimes in my history in local government between gift of public funds type issues when you're giving away services for free to a certain group but charging another group, and that's why you really establish these nonprofits like the Town of Yountville Community Foundation, is to allow us the ability to solve those problems. And so we have the senior subsidy fund. It's active. They do have to provide very simple income verification. They meet I think it's like 250% of the poverty level. We do have 3 veterans currently utilizing the program for Golden Ticket. So it's $200 a quarter, which more than pays for Golden Ticket, and it could also pay for an excursion or something else that they're interested in. And so we came out of the joint meeting, and then I also was in another meeting with Josh Kaiser from the Veterans Home, and we talked about how to better promote that at the Veterans Home. And I also just wanted to point out that they've actually purchased Golden Ticket memberships to try to give away to members who did not take advantage of that. But I think, again, maybe just be a communication thing. But we can go whichever direction you're interested in. I think that giving them away, I would just consult a little bit with Gary about legalities and making sure that that's handled appropriately. And then the impacts of that, I don't necessarily see huge impacts. We can always, we have probably 4 or 5 classes that are typically at capacity, which tells me we can accept more people into pretty much any golden ticket class without having a huge impact to the budget because we're already paying an instructor to be there. I don't think that it would decrease our revenues because we would still have those spots available to the general public that they're used to paying for as well. So there's quite a few options there. I think that I would just want to, consult with Gary a little bit on the option of saying, it's free for all the veterans to come to something before we kind of pursue that action. But I just want to make sure that you are aware through the foundation that that program exists. And we do have some veterans using it as well as other seniors in the community.
Can I ask a quick question, Sam? I recall reading a lot about why so many seniors, for example, who are eligible for food stamps don't apply for food stamps because there's kind of a stigma. And so as you mentioned, there's 2 veterans who have applied for the subsidy.
Yeah.
3. And I know, having talked to Cecilia before, folks are a little reticent on the water. We have a program to subsidize water use and one other, which escapes me right now. But so that's also part of my thinking. I do realize you can apply, but especially seniors have a real issue with making those applications for things like food stamps and whatnot. So that was part of my thinking. And I picked 50 kind of out of the air. It could be 25, and based on first come, first served or a lottery or whatever. But Gary can opine whether that's a gift of public funds. It's not all that different than doing it via a subsidy application, but Gary would be better able, of course, to say that.
The subsidy
but my thinking was to kind of get past that senior hurdle that people don't like to acknowledge that they don't have the need.
Yeah. Right. So I just want to differentiate the subsidy program is funded and run through the Town of Yountville Community Foundation, which is a 501c3 entity, and its funds are totally separate from the town, but they are managed by Springbrook in our finance system. So and we have a youth subsidy fund in there as well that's operated for a very long time. So that's the only reason I differentiate the two, is because we're able to say we have a formal scholarship program and it pays the town for your participation basically in whatever it is you're doing. So
it's right. I get that now. It's
different
a foundation.
Pot of money.
Yep. Got it. Okay.
Yeah. But we can examine some of those things, and what I was thinking is, kind of bringing that back to when I have my my budget workshop with you, and we can go over some of those options, and then by then I'll have consulted with Gary, and we can discuss how you want to move forward, if that sounds okay. Yeah. Okay.
Sam, before you go, would that foundation money also address Robin's idea of some kind of aid for people who really need it in town that aren't really specific to programs?
Yeah, so we have several funds in the foundation currently. So we have youth subsidy, senior subsidy. We also house the Thanksgiving Community Dinner Fund and the Friends of the Library and the Bocce Association. And we have one that's called a community fund, which is just an unallocated, it doesn't have a designated expense or goal tied to it. Or we could, propose to that board that we establish a fund similar to that. My brain starts working it through like, okay, well, what would be the qualifications and who decides that and how does it all work? So we would have to put a program together behind it. But I think that in my mind, some of you may remember the town used to do a grant program for a long time to other nonprofits, and how kind of messy that was. And we really moved away from that. But I think that it would make a lot of sense for a program like that if the council was interested to be proposed to the foundation as something that could be established. And then we can apply for grant funding if we needed to into the foundation a lot easier, because again, it's a 501c3, and people can also make tax deductible donations, and they can say this is for that resident emergency fund, and we can discuss what that looks like. But I'm not sure in this specific example if it's going to solve that problem. So we would have to just talk about what that looks like. what are the uses and who decides and how do we, what do we ask for as far as proof of a need and that kind of thing. But that would definitely be, I think, in my mind, a good place for that. And we modeled a lot of our administrative policies around the Napa Community Foundation, which they have programs such as that as well. So I think that would be a pretty good place to look, and I think the board would be supportive. But just to kind of caveat that, the board is very administrative. They're not actively fundraising. The entities that are there and we're helping by being that administrative oversight, they're doing their fundraising. So we don't run the Friends of the Library. They run their own thing. We're their fiduciary agent, and we hold the funds and do all that administrative stuff. So if we were to bring on this new emergency fund, we'd have to figure out, how does money get into there, and how do we administer it? So does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's unpack this, John. So I think we are going to wait on the golden ticket. Samantha's going to bring us some more information back at workshop 2 with some consultation with our town attorney about gift of funds. So that one is to be determined at a future workshop for our budgeting, and as well as the continued care. I think that's going to be kind of part of that policy discussion with the foundation. Samantha, sorry, you get the first 2 on the list. And let's go with where does the council feel about adjusting the TOT now upwards, or wait until the end of the year, and if we possibly have some, that would then fall into unassigned fund balances, which that's what I favor right now, instead of counting our chickens before they're hatched, waiting for the putting in unassigned fund balances.
I'm sorry. I thought the suggestion was for next year we budget it conservatively. Were we talking about doing something for this year for TOT? I thought it was for next year. Maybe I misunderstood the budget. I thought
this is what is in the staff report. Maybe you can go over that one more time.
Yes. So we did, in the estimated column for fiscal year 22-23, we did increase the estimated TOT from 7.5 to 7.775, and we are mirroring that projection for 23-24 at the 7.775.
So when you made a suggestion to Robin, who expressed the concern about TOT, I thought you were suggesting for the 23-24 we be conservative at like something less than $7,775,000
Correct.
for the next budget cycle.
If in June, when we go to, when you are reviewing the final proposed budget for adoption, if at that time we're seeing that collections through April are not pointing in a good sign, pointing in a good way, we could present the final proposed budget with 7.5 million or less. We could go back to the original projection or less if you like. But
it would be next year, right?
It would be for 23-24.
Based on maybe what happened
Correct.
this year, or not. You could just make it for next year regardless of what happened this year.
Correct.
That's
and
what
if
that's what we're
council
doing now is building next year's budget.
Right. I just wanted to be sure I understood.
Yes, and if there was concern about the current year, council could direct staff to also bring back the TOT projection for the current fiscal year to just be the original budgeted amount. But I feel like by June we'll have a really good idea, and I think that we will most likely exceed that 7.5 million in this fiscal year.
Right.
So we could always leave the 7.75 million in the current fiscal year and reduce down the next fiscal year budget as well.
Right. And my concern, we're all reading on the internet with all the rains, fire season is going to be really bad. So that's, again, why, and that's going to be later in the year.
Yes.
So that's my also feeling about being a little conservative.
Mayor, I'm comfortable with staff's recommendations. I don't, I mean, what they presented to us, I think, is a conservative guesstimate, and so I'm comfortable with they're presenting to us now, and I think we should just wait as we get more information, if then we can decide to maybe make some changes, but I think it's good right now.
So, because right now, it's an increase over
Right.
this year, okay?
All right, but
So-
it's a reasonably good estimate as we're looking at projections for the year, I think. So I think I'm comfortable with the current projected revenues, and I think we should work with them until we see something different, so.
Okay, where's everybody?
I'm fine with it. I do want to see what March brings, since we've got fire on one end of the year, and this year we had rain all through March, so I think numbers are going to be down. But if we can take a look at April,
Yes.
and then make that final decision, then I'd
Okay.
feel more
So-
confident.
So with the final proposed budget that is presented in June, we will bring forward the most recent available TOT data. And that
Okay, so
will-
it sounds like we're going to do the same then as we're doing with Golden Ticket, and then continue care of the foundation as well as the TOT. We're going to leave that. And then there's the possible fund for improvements in front of Town Hall with streets and crosswalks.
Yeah. Even our entrance, the sidewalk, it's a dead end to a manhole cover. And
So start a fund, put a little money away, because we don't know what the costs are or anything like that.
I think the direction to staff would be to do an estimate and a scope of work and bring that back to your next budget session so you can then consider. So right now you'd be directing staff to go explore that project, bring back estimates and scope of work that you can consider for your budget.
Is that going to be ready by
Before.
early May?
Yes, we'd have that ready.
Okay. All right, early May. And what
That's
about
a yes for all of you.
undergrounding utility? Anybody interested in considering that? Starting a fund for that?
I'm interested in starting a fund. I guess I'd also be interested to know more about, like you said before, there used to be funds available from, I don't know if it was AT&T or however those dollars, rural dollar, used to be available to help underground, and we would usually collect and save, and then typically on Washington Street it might be connected with a development where there was some shared costs with the project developer. But are those funds still available, or?
So we have multiple funds available, but none are really add up to enough to do a project. So we would need to supplement those funds. I think the ones you're referring to, Vice Mayor Knight, are what we call the Rule 20A funds. And so everybody that pays a PG&E bill, there's some really small fraction that goes to what's called Rule 20A, which is for undergrounding. And then by formula, the town receives some portion of that. Our running balance for Rule 20A right now is right around $190,000 or so. And we confirmed with PG&E that we can't use it for design services. It has to be for construction. So current estimates right now for undergrounding, excuse me, are around $1,000 a linear foot. So that gets us not very far, 190 feet, which isn't enough to do anything. We also have our own undergrounding fund, which we've collected from impact fees over time, which is, I think,
About 146,000?
And so
Doesn't get you very far either.
right. So the combination of those two don't add up to enough to do anything.
Right.
So we would look at creating a fund that would get contributed to periodically to build those funds in order to apply them to a project, and we could look at potential projects for undergrounding.
I think the challenge is, in the past, it was always a plan to do it along commercial streets, and the question becomes developing a policy. Where do you start? At some point years ago, there was just some recognition that dollars weren't available, and we said that there should be priority streets in the community, and Old Town was Old Town, and so so I guess at some point we could start setting money aside, but it's just very expensive, and it'd be best to probably have a conversation about a policy and a program that where it made sense to do it for safety purposes and things like that, and so we're just being realistic about what we'll be able to achieve in the next 20 years.
Right.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Vice Mayor Knight that I do understand the idea of just putting money aside, but I would be more comfortable with kind of a plan as to where it would go, what made sense for the community, what areas, because it could be very disruptive in terms of digging up streets and whatnot. So I would be more comfortable with a plan. I mean, because we have a lot going on here. Here we have this really significant increase in fire services. We have some reason to be a little conservative on our TOT. So I would just, before we start embarking on funding another kind of pot of money without a specific plan, I would be in favor of having a specific plan, or at least moving cautiously, because we have both revenue constraints and also expenditures that are significantly increasing. So that's my kind of thought on that.
And I think a plan, it would just be reasonable that you wouldn't dig a street up, because that's very expensive. There are certain streets that, when it's time to really dig all the way down and not just top coat it, that that would be the only thing that would make sense at that time. So it would be a very long-term plan, but I don't think we'd ever just want to go dig up streets.
No.
And I think what's interesting is it really be in a context as Mr. Tencher talked about the town having a policy about resiliency and choosing projects that are, sometimes they call it the low-hanging fruit, or something that we have a Wi-Fi or broadband so the community can know what's going on in the case of an emergency, or if it's an emergency water tank where we have water in case something happens with Rector, that we prioritize our resiliency in this community. And I think talking about that and having a work session to discuss that would be helpful.
Yeah, I agree, but I also wonder how current we are on information about what PG&E will do at this point, since they're sort of on the hook for a lot of undergrounding, and whether or not there are other funds through federal improvements that are available that we don't actually know about. That would be, a place to start as well.
Yes. So, I mean, in terms of today's action, it sounds like we won't bring a line item back to create an undergrounding fund that you're going to contribute to, but it sounds like a council priority going forward is doing a underground resiliency study, for lack of a better word, and then determine how we might fund that.
Maybe how undergrounding fits into a resiliency plan, maybe.
Okay.
I think so. Yeah.
It definitely has to work hand in hand with all the paving that we're doing.
Yes.
And the only map that I've seen of town is of the lines that are above ground or below ground have come from PG&E. So it would be good to step back and say how much of the town currently has lines, and to work that plan in tandem with paving.
Okay.
Okay,
So we're good on that one.
all right.
And I just had one thing before you close this section.
I'm not close, I just want to.
Okay, when you get to it. Okay.
Okay. John, that's what I have on my list. What did you have
The
on?
only other one I had was sometime in this coming fiscal year, host a town council open house event.
Yeah, a town council, town staff, an open house for the community to meet not only our new town manager, but some new staff that has joined us in the last, during COVID. So that and I mean, some of the community neighborhoods have had an opportunity to meet Rosalba, and through our issues in Washington Park, but for the whole community to meet all the new staff and to have an opportunity for them to learn about the different departments and what they do. It's some common area, whereas one of our candidates for one of our commissions said it's always good to bring food to the event when you're inviting residents to to meet and greet, so.
I agree with that, because when I was campaigning, I asked people what they wanted, and they wanted to get to know who was running the town. And I think, this idea of a meeting, maybe a brown bag thing, where we have tables set up where there's Public Works and there's the town clerk, there's whoever, at different tables, and maybe it's a progressive lunch where you have appetizers with one group, and you move along so that everybody has to move and meet everybody. That would be a great icebreaker, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, great
So-
idea.
We can plan.
Trade show.
So basically, we've created a lot of good work, but we didn't really spend a lot of money yet. That's good.
I was going to suggest the community promotions and programs budget. There is a line item there for community outreach and promotion. So I think staff could maybe determine some cost of what an open house might be, and we could plug that number into that line item.
Great idea.
Yeah.
Great idea. All right, Councilmember Tripp, do you have
I just one more comment. I was just reflecting a little more on the idea of that Robin raised, but also that Debbie Altstar raised about having some ability to provide some grants. And I do understand what Samantha said, that it could work through the foundation. I guess if Gary's going to be looking into the whole question of whether having free golden ticket is an issue, I would be also interested, because whether the town itself, I do understand the value of having it at the foundation, but whether the town could have a special fund, emergency fund, I know it might be hard to administer, and I don't know all the history of why it might not have worked before, but whether that has the same problem. I do believe some cities do have those sorts of social welfare programs, but maybe Gary could look at that as well, if that's okay with everyone else. Yeah, because I do feel that's really important for a bunch of reasons, given what the demographics of our community are, and not forgetting there are people who are living in a kind of different, with different economic realities than some of us might have.
Okay, I think we've finished our item 10B. Now staff has all the direction they need, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Right, then we've done our job. Thank you very much for that. Let me find my agenda. Okay,
Is it
now,
final break time?
staff informational reports. Yes, we can take a
3 minutes. long as there's no line
5
down
minutes.
there.
I think we've only got a couple council meeting reports.
Okay, and then
Yeah, and then
before closed session?
Before closed session. Okay, good. All right, so let me dig through my piles here. Napa County Flood Control is me. We didn't meet. MBTA, we meet tomorrow. And Upper Valley Waste Management, we met yesterday, and I'll try to go through this. We did a lot of stuff real quickly. First of all, Friday is Shred-It Day. I've got raise a flag and interview, and so I'm going to miss a lot of my Shred-It Day. But please, everybody, come out 12 to 3 behind the community center. Anything with a cord. We've got 2 Shred-It trucks, very popular. We've doubled in size. And on Upper Valley Waste Management yesterday, we approved a $100,000 grant to the county. The county's going to issue 2 coupons, and this is for the county residents now that have green waste laying around on their property to pick it up. They, will put it in a truck themselves and take it up to Clover Flat, but we'll be providing coupons that should get them at least a couple truckloads up there until the money runs out. So that's going to be a great program. And also, I just wanted to let everybody know we have started, I've been talking about SB 1383 for 4 years, so now it is time. I've been talking about flipping the lids and getting OOP tickets. We have delegated our inspections to UVDS, so they did those around Calistoga, St. Helena, Yountville, and the county area they serve. They came to Yountville, and they did inspections at Ranch Market, multi-housing on Mulberry Street, as well as some of the Thomas Keller properties. And just quickly, contaminated bins and cart, one food waste. They did 9 different carts around. One food waste cart was contaminated, 7 garbage cans were contaminated, and 11 recycling. So what that means, and we're going to start doing this now for the residents, it's going to be some spot checks. It's going to be in May and June for the residents. We're going to notify the sheriff. And so basically, some guys from, or gals from Upper Valley Disposal will be coming by, probably late at night on Sunday night when your garbage is out. They'll have yellow vests. We'll make sure that the sheriff knows. And I'll announce it here, too, in case you get calls from your residents. And they'll be flipping the lid of each one of your garbage cans to see if they will probably just give you an oops tag if it's 10% or less contaminated. More than that, you probably will not, they probably won't pick it up, and you'll have to clean it up before they'll come back and get it. So, and then starting in 2024, we will be issuing fines through our fine system, each of the municipalities. This is state law. This is something that Yountville must do based on SB 1383. So, question.
To take a step back, I have heard you refer to SB 1383, but for some of the newbies, and I see your sheet of paper there says hazardous waste. So are you, when you're saying contaminated?
No, it's not hazardous. I'll cover that up.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I'm trying to figure out what it is.
SB 1383 is a law, Gary, I don't know, when was that, in like 18 or 19, and it's for...
To recycle properly and...
No, it's...
Green waste.
It's for keeping organics out of your garbage.
Okay.
Gary, go ahead.
Yeah, so it was actually passed in 2016. It took CalRecycle several years to adopt regulations. They finally did. Those took effect 2.5 years ago or so and are quite lengthy. They impose requirements on local jurisdictions like the town, but also in producers, everyone who subscribes to solid waste service. Main takeaway is there's now a diversion goal for organic waste in the same way that there's a diversion goal for solid waste and also for recyclables. Service is mandatory, and that can be done in a 1, 2, or 3 bin system. Here there's a 3 bin system. The town is part of a JPA for solid waste, and has delegated responsibility for implementing that law to the JPA, and the JPA has done so through franchise agreements as well.
So they will be looking at your green bin
Right.
to make sure there is food in there.
Right.
And they will be looking at your brown bin to make sure there is no food in there.
brown bin,
And,
okay.
and all your bins have little tags on them, so
Yeah,
you
and
can
I-
look at those. And please, everybody, read your garbage bill. We actually spend a lot of time on the newsletters that go in there that sometimes
Not
you don't want to look
everybody
at.
in town gets a garbage bill.
Well, they.
I know we get the newsletters
Yes,
from the
but-
town, but
right.
just from my community. And I have had some residents of Mulberry get the whoopsie, but they also had a can taken away. So I think they had a pizza box thinking it was recyclable or something, but
Yeah, that's,
the more we can do to
contaminate.
So,
So
community.
that pizza box
That
cannot go in
contaminate was the word.
your recycle bin. It's contaminated with food waste, and so it goes in your green waste. And the pizza boxes are right on those tags.
Okay.
But also, for anybody in the mobile home parks, you can maybe download, make some copies, and put them in the common areas. It's all on our UVDS website.
Okay.
And that would be a great place to look at that. So,
I
May I
also
ask
have
a question, Margie?
Sure.
And
Just
also,
one second, let me
oh, I'm sorry.
go with
So
Councilmember
my
Reeves.
question is, how much, aside from the tag that goes on the bin, and what you get is the exact same thing on the newsletter, there's so many things that aren't included that are a question mark in my mind, that it feels like there hasn't been enough frequently asked questions, kind of webinar or a workshop or something like that, because there's so many things that don't fall in those categories that we deal with every day, and you sort of hover over each bin and think, well, maybe that one, because you have to put it somewhere. So there's the obvious things, and now we're getting used to whatever food contamination is. But I think people still think that they can put compostable utensils in the compost bin. That's not okay. There's a lot of things that are gray areas. What kind of plastic actually goes in the recycling? All of that stuff is not clear, still not clear. So we've been trying for a long time, but I don't think it's been really, there's not been enough dialogue between actual people. Yes, there's paper and there's those little things on the bins, but it doesn't cover everything. So I would like to see more education, either with FAQs on the website or some kind of seminar online or whatever that you could access when you're like have a question mark over your head.
And it is on the UVDS website. Maybe that's something we need to link on our website, because they actually talk about that. And, generally, soft plastics go in your garbage. Hard plastic items will go into your recycling bin. And we did have a seminar. We've had 2 of them here in town at the community center. Plus UVDS, if this is something that there's enough interest and people would come, we can certainly have UVDS come. They have a lot of education outreach. They actually have a booth every year at Yountville Days, too. So if that's something, because this is, I think now, it really is going to be, people are getting, a lot more attention, and when they get oops tickets, or, they're not picking their garbage up, maybe that's when we've really got everybody's attention, and it would be a good time to have something like that.
We'll work on a page and messaging for the future as well. We'll present to the council maybe in a future meeting in an informational report, just to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the council for the residents of the town.
And Hillary can certainly, reach out to, UVDS. I can give you, who, and we've got all this stuff already prepared. They can send you any postings that you might want to do on Nextdoor or things like that, so you don't have to recreate the wheel.
That would be fantastic. We now have our code compliance officer as well, the new addition to the staff back in, I think, February, who is in the process of creating some really helpful informational materials that we will periodically send out, but it would be fantastic to have the resource that you mentioned as well.
Well, also, I think you're one of the volunteers to help out at Shred It Day, correct? And good, thank you. And Andy Vick, he'll be there too. He's the guy to go to. So you'll find Andy. He'll be in an orange vest just like you will.
Very nice.
Handing out orange vest to everybody who's working that day. So I'm happy to connect
Andy
you guys.
Vick.
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
I think
Talk
the
to
more
Andy.
education, the better.
Yeah, because it is definitely coming right around the corner. So, and let's get everybody, kind of in compliance about kind of what goes in there. But also just to add to when your recycling bin actually goes to UVDS, it goes on a sorting line. So if there is some slight contamination in there, they sort that out manually as well. So, but it's really, this compliance and the inspections is all part of state law. We didn't invent it. So
No, I know.
we just get to enforce it. So
And that, may I ask you a question?
yes.
So that was my question. I've heard you speak about our code compliance doing enforcement, and yet I know in other places I've lived, it's been discussed that that's really on the garbage company, in this case, and VUSD. So who actually is in charge of compliance? Is
Well,
that the town, or is that the garbage entity?
In terms of the inspection of the
tickets.
bins, the JPA, all of the municipalities, including Yountville, me, we've delegated that to UVDS
Okay,
to
so
do
it's not
that.
Yountville code
Yountville-
compliance?
No,
person.
Yountville
Okay, 'cause I
code
thought I heard you
compliance.
say that the
They're
other
doing
day.
other things.
No. I thought I heard you say they were going to be looking at bins, and I didn't
No,
understand that.
UVDS
Okay.
personnel
Okay,
is
gotcha.
doing
That's
that.
all I wanted to be sure.
Mayor
Okay.
Mueller,
But what we do is we will have, because we have the mechanism for fines, any fines that then get imposed can be done, so the town may be involved with
are there
imposing
other-
fines based on
Do
information.
they have to go through the town, or do they have the ability?
No, they don't have the ability to fine.
The
That's what-
JPA doesn't?
No.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Mayor Mueller, just so you know, and the council as well, Deputy Director Rosalba Ramirez just let us know that there is a page with information on trash, compostables, and how to add items specifically. It's on our website. I'm looking at it right now. So if you'd like to review it and you want us to add anything else in the future, we can do that as well.
And that's on our website, Eddie? Okay.
Correct. It's
Okay.
under trash and recycling services. If you go to
Okay.
home, and on the upper menus under services, you will see trash and recycling services.
Gosh, you guys are all over it. That's great.
Under services?
Correct.
Yeah.
That's
And I
great.
really do like this website.
I do too.
And I like the fact that you have how do I, where those kind of questions could be put in. How do I sort my trash or something? So it would be very helpful for residents. But this is is a very good improvement of our website. Thank you for the work you've done.
So just to finish up, I promised this was going to go quick.
I know.
Okay, now to
Yeah.
my hazardous waste. So there will be, for residents, a hazardous waste event Friday, May 5th, day before the garage sale, from 1 to 4. And this is at UVDS. You go halfway up the valley. It's right past Whitehall Lane, and you go down there. And any businesses, they are coming on, make sure I've got the right, hold on. The businesses are on Friday, May the 5th. Residential hazardous household waste is going to be 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's same day as our garage sale, Saturday, May the 6th, same place. And I have a whole list, which is also hopefully on that website, what a hazardous household waste is. So it's basically, paint and fluorescent light bulbs and batteries. Everyone's got batteries, pool chemicals, but more than happy to make this list available. It is also, you can go on Upper Valley Waste Management, JPA website at the county and print out all these materials. This is what we reviewed at our meeting yesterday.
Or Clover Flat.
Neither. It's at the Upper Valley Disposal. That's where all of our garbage goes first to be sorted before it's taken to Clover Flat. Only the garbage goes to the Clover Flat. The recycling, this is the recycling center.
Yeah, just below St. Helena, right?
It's at Whitehall Lane.
Yeah, Whitehall Lane.
yeah.
Should be
Yeah.
Pestoni.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, and here's their flyer on their
Yeah.
homepage.
So it's, just look for the Bastoni Family Winery right off Highway 29. Okay, so I'm done with Upper Valley Waste Management, LAFCO, I already reported on. WIC, did anybody go to WIC?
No, that's not till next week.
Climate Action Committee,
Coming up?
okay. Cal Cities update, anybody go to the leadership training? I heard there's a great turnout throughout the valley. We'll have to make it high priority for Yountville next year. Any council ad hoc standing committees?
In progress for this.
All right.
housing.
Any final council announcements or agenda items for the future?
Mayor, just one conversation. I'm not sure if we could get an update on our conversation or receive maybe some more information from staff about our May 11th meeting with ILG, that we could get some of the information that they're going to provide us sooner so that we can be prepared for that meeting. I'm not sure if we need to have a conversation about that on May 2nd, but just receive the information as soon as we can receive it. So get it. Thank you.
Maybe an agenda. Okay?
Yes.
I would like to propose something.
Okay, an agenda item?
Yes, whether or not under Parks and Recs, who are already very much tapped out, but whether or not the town could look at doing an adoptive vet program. As Lisa Peak at Calvet mentioned, if people wanted to have access to vets and help at the veterans home, they would need to volunteer. They do have staff, but I don't see them taking initiative on it.
Well, maybe I can give a quick update on the Goodwill Committee real quick. So the Chamber formed a group, and Pam and I are part of that group. And actually, we had Josh from the Veterans Home, and information will be coming out. There's going to be probably an article in the Yountville Sun, how you actively go about volunteering up there.
All I want.
And there's a couple programs and subcommittees that are formed about, having lunch with a vet and probably having some potlucks or two. So it's coming.
That's exactly what I was like, how do we steer that?
Yeah.
'Cause
Facilitated by residents, which is nice.
Yes.
That's what I thought it should be.
We're going to, in our next meeting's in June.
Also didn't want to
but-
go around
And
you.
at that time, we'll be, I think that was certainly having a lot of press information coming out was
Good.
part of that plan. So hold tight for that. All right. With that, we're going to take a break. And
One quick announcement.
Okay.
With the approval of the consent calendar item for the Earth Day flag,
Yeah.
we'll be raising that flag in front of Town Hall on Friday at 12:30.
Okay, that is April
21st.
21st, 12:30 p.m. Come out and raise the flag, and we'll take some photos. And we have a poll. We're all ready to go. All right. Anything else with that? Town Attorney Bell, do we have closed session items?
Yes, Mayor and council members, there are two closed sessions on the agenda.
Wait till he announces.
There are two
Hold on,
closed
everybody.
sessions on the agenda this evening. The first is conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation. The second is conference with labor negotiator. The details of those two closed sessions are included in the agenda.
Okay, with that, we will take a 5-minute break. Thank you.
I'm with you, Robin.